Israel's education minister, Yoav Kish, has threatened all-out war against Hezbollah after an airstrike killed 12 children and young adults in the Israeli-occupied Golan Heights yesterday. Israel blames Hezbollah for yesterday's attacks, and the US Secretary of State Antony Blinken backed up their allegations but called for calm. Well, the Israeli military has hit several targets in Lebanon in retaliation, but Hezbollah insists we were not responsible. Let's talk again to Israeli-Palestinian journalist Noga Tarnopolsky, based in Jerusalem. And Noga, the heat is rising again, particularly on that very sensitive border area.
Yes, it is. Well, the heat rose because yesterday a rocket launched from Lebanon hit a football field, a football pitch where children were playing an afternoon game, killing 12 of them on the spot. And there are many still in hospital, still critical. So it's an ongoing situation. It's hard, very hard to imagine that Israel won't respond to this sort of hit. There have been, by the way, it's a Fakr 1 rocket. It's an Iranian-made rocket that, according to the Israeli military, that only Hezbollah is in possession of. And there have been, basically since this rocket hit and the understanding that it was children who were killed, they're all between the ages of 10 and 16, Hezbollah has been engaged in a very significant public effort to claim that actually it's either a false flag Israeli attack or that the Israeli Iron Dome malfunctioned. But there don't seem to be any actual indications that that's the case.
And they're doing this, they're rowing back because even they see how this looks, how appalling this is, and what the retaliation might be.
Yes, what the retaliation might be, and the retaliation will necessarily affect Lebanese citizens who, in their own way, are also hostages to Hezbollah. That's, a terror group that has basically taken possession of parts of southern Lebanon. The other aspect is, a very particularly Middle Eastern one. It's not just that children were really just butchered. I mean, I can't describe to you the pictures of what this football pitch looked like, but the children are not Jewish children. They're also not Muslim children. They're children who belong to a small Middle Eastern community called Druze.
Yeah.
And there are Druze communities throughout the Levant. But the fact that it was not Jews has also impacted strongly. As ugly as that may sound, there's tremendous sympathy in the Arab world for these children and for this community on Majdal Shams on the Golan Heights that has suffered. I mean, it's really an incalculable loss. One family lost, I think, 4 children.
Noga, I know that there are some of our listeners who will say, this is appalling, it's terrible, children have been killed, they're innocent. And they will then say, what about the children of Gaza who've been killed in their thousands? What about them?
Are you asking me what about
Yeah,
them?
no.
I think,
What I'm saying is, I know that some of our listeners, while connecting fully with
I
what you're
think the
saying,
loss.
that's what they'll be thinking.
Yeah, and they should be thinking. I think exactly that. I think the loss of all the children, of any of these children, is, it's a travesty against basic humanity. I don't know really how else to put it. And yesterday, to the best of my ability to check, and from all official sources, it wasn't exactly that these children were targeted, but it was some kind of miscalculation on Hezbollah's part. Apparently, they were trying to either hit civilians, like they did last week, Jewish civilians who live there. Last week, a couple returning home from the supermarket were hit by a rocket in their car and killed. Or they were maybe trying to hit a small military base nearby. But either way, it was a direct hit on the goalposts of a football field. The difference, you know, the death of children anywhere and everywhere, I don't need to be the one to report this, is a
Yes.
catastrophe. But the difference is that these children from Majdal Shams are represented by the Israeli government, for whom, and under international law, this, butchery yesterday is a casus belli, and Israel will respond. Whereas the children who are victims of Israeli bombings in Gaza are simultaneously the victims of Hamas, holding them hostage, often literally. When Hamas hides its military operations in a school or in a building, of residential flats, the children there are, in a way, victims of both sides, and there's no one who is speaking out for them or who will retaliate for them.
Yeah, and Noga, this is truly a terrible, awful situation. It's escalating all the time. We know that the Israeli military has struck targets, Hezbollah targets, it says deep inside Lebanese territory. One wonders where it goes from here. How much further might Israel go?
Yes, I mean, Israel has not yet decided, or at least not made public any decision, and we know that there are really, really frantic diplomatic efforts right now underway. The Lebanese government has said that the United States has asked it to, quote unquote, restrain Hezbollah. But again, remember, the Lebanese government is not a strong government, and Hezbollah is a powerful, powerful Islamist militia, armed and funded by Iran. Much more so, even it's a much more powerful group even than Hamas, to the extent that Hezbollah really is basically an arm of the Iranian military operation. So Iranian generals who've been killed by Israeli strikes in Syria, for example, they're the ones commanding many of Hezbollah's activities. And I don't know, I have no reason to think that Iran directed this to happen. But when you're lobbing 50-kilo warheads at a place with civilian, residences and civilians enjoying a weekend, the risk is that something like this will happen.
Yeah. Noga Tarnopolsky, Israeli-Palestinian journalist based in Jerusalem, thank you once more for joining us on Times Radio.